Hello, my name is Hamid with We Buy Any Card, and in today's collection video I have three lots of cards to show you. All of these have arrived with us in the last 24 hours, and while I flick through them, I want to explain to you the process of selling your Magic the Gathering or Pokemon cards, and how to extract the best value from your collection. Now, the first lot is a relatively small one, and the owner of these cards, he sent us a message with a list, and we gave him a quote before he then shipped his cards to us. And unfortunately, the condition was not quite what we would expect. So, for example, this card was quite heavily inked. The Sensei's Dividing Tops were pretty heavily played. So we did have to revise the offer slightly, but he was quite happy with that, and we sent him pictures of the relevant cards just to verify that the condition wasn't quite how he had described it. This is an extremely common thing to happen because not everyone is an expert in grading cards. It's not something most people do on a daily basis. So some person might see a lightly paid card, but if you look closer, maybe something like this, you'll see some stains on the side there, and it's easy to minimize these things if you haven't been immersed in that world before. So this person, he got paid on the same day of arrival, and he was pretty happy with that. This second lot was slightly bigger, and for this one we were sent a list. We gave him a price, and everything checked out actually just fine. We didn't have to do any revisions on arrival, and the collection was paid for on the same day. When people come to me and ask, how do I sell my Magic collection? Generally, I say you'll get the most value for your collection if you sell it yourself. It's just that if you are willing to put in the work and the effort of pricing up your cards, of taking responsibility for grading them correctly, of putting them up for sale on a trade group or on Card Market or eBay or whatever trade platform you have access to. In the US, it might be TCG Player. You will probably get more value that way in most scenarios than if you were to use a collection buying service like ours or any other. And generally, another thing to bear in mind is that the higher the value of the card, the more value you will extract from the collection from a collection buyer. So if I'm just going to move to the back here and compare a couple of cards. So we have something like these. And let's just take this. So we have sort of three price points here. I think these are probably in the region of about £40. These are in the region of £20, and this card is in the region of about £2. So quite a distance apart in terms of value. Now, from a collection buyer, if you go to somebody like us and you ask how much are you willing to pay for this card, in most cases you're going to be getting maybe 50% of the value of the card. That's just because of the labor required for selling any individual card. It generally doesn't meet our cost to sell cards unless we're getting them at a fairly low rate. And it also allows people to take a bulk amount of maybe a stack of these £1 to £2 cards and actually get a decent price for them. If you wanted to extract more value from it, you would get paid more if you went to Card Market, for example. But obviously you do have to factor in there that there's a risk, both if if you're not comfortable grading the card, and if you misgrade the card, then you may be having to refund the buyer. If you are shipping the card, it can get damaged. It can be get lost in shipping. Now, this is very rare, but it does happen, so it's worth bearing in mind. And obviously, the more you send, the chance of it happening approaches approaches 100%. I think generally for our shipments, the loss rate is in the region of less than 0.5%, maybe between sort of 0.2 and 0.4% on average. Here we have these 20-pound cards, and when you get up to the higher values, you're going to be seeing a lot more return from a collection buyer. You might be seeing between 70 and 80%. So if these are 20-pound cards, you probably be getting in the region of about 15 or 16 pounds for them. So it makes more sense, at least proportionally, to sell these to a collection buyer, although you must also consider that the absolute amounts go up as well. So whereas if you sell something like this to a collection buyer, you might only be losing out on £1, but if you sell this 20-pound card to a collection buyer, you might be losing out on £5. So proportionally, you might be getting a better value, but in absolute terms, you'll be potentially losing out. So everyone has to determine for themselves effectively what their point of tolerance for something like this is, and how much labor and risk they are prepared to assume. Going to the post office multiple times a week, if you're selling a large lot of cards, buying postage and postal materials, writing address labels, this isn't something that everyone is prepared to do. So if this is something that you'd rather avoid, then you do have the option of using a service like ours. Now, when you get up to the slightly higher level, sort of maybe 40 to 50-pound cards, then you do see both a higher percentage of your of the price that we would pay come back to you. I mean, we're talking about probably a minimum of 80%. So if this is a 40-pound card, you're looking at something like £32, 32, maybe 34 even. But again, in absolute terms, you're talking about probably a greater loss. You might be losing between £5 and £10 compared to if you sold this yourself online. Obviously, if you're selling on something like eBay, the price you get is going to be pretty unpredictable, and also you might you will have to pay fees. So eBay's fees are in the region of 15%. The card market fees are about 5%, but generally you might get a slightly higher price on eBay, although again it is pretty unpredictable. The last lot of cards was sent to us, and we'd already priced it up beforehand, and the seller knew what he wanted, so he decided not to take money for these cards. Actually, he did go about half and half. Half of them were paid for, and the other half he decided to trade in. So these have the conditions on them because we had to grade them carefully when they came in, just because they're pretty high value cards. And I'll show you some of these in a bit more detail here. City of Traders, obviously an extremely iconic card on the reserved list, and has seen a pretty good increase in price over the last couple of months. And once you get up to this level of card, you know, 200 to 300-pound card, then you'll see an even better percentage-wise return on your cards when you sell to a collection buyer. But again, in absolute terms, you know, even if you're taking a 10% hit on a 300-pound card, that's still £30. But a counterpoint to that, obviously, is if something like this were to get lost in the post, it's a lot more serious and difficult to deal with than if it were a 10-pound card. I'll just run through some of these. These are some beautiful cards here, and the condition is immaculate in most cases. The cities were about excellent, but the rest of the cards are all really nice. Now, what other reasons might people have to use collection buying service like ours? Expediency is one of the big reasons. It can take a long time to sell a lot of cards like this, especially if you don't have an established selling relationship, or a reputation rather. If you don't have an established eBay account or an established card market account, these things can take a long time because people might not feel comfortable buying from you. And on card market, you simply won't be able to send cards untracked or uninsured, for example, which will limit your ability to sell cheaper cards until you have established a certain minimum number of sales. Um, and so time can be a factor, as I mentioned before. Just the effort required can be a factor. A lot of people like, especially if they're leaving the game, they like to just be done with it, send off their collection to somebody they can trust will pay a fair price for them. One thing I would definitely say to be wary of is sort of, I would call them independent collection buyers. I mean, most, backpack traders or people who eventually go on to become stores, ourselves included, start this way because it's sort of how you gain your experience in this world. But um, shops that, for example, don't pay taxes on their income, shops that, or maybe shops is generous, but collection buyers that don't pay taxes on their income, that don't report, don't pay VAT. That's probably not somebody you want to be doing business with. These are pretty good condition. And here we have 4 copies of Judge Reward Chalice of the Void. So we've talked about risk, and we talked about effort, and the importance of time in selling collections. There are situations you might find yourself in where um, you simply need the cash fast, and you don't have the time to wait to sell it or establish a reputation. But when you get up to higher level cards like these Grim Monoliths, because the percentage that collection buyers offer on these are usually higher, we're talking about maybe, you probably get up to about 90% in some cases. And also the fact that you might be able to get a trade-in bonus on them. We offer roughly about 10% trade-in bonus. It makes good sense often to send them in and get the cards that you want because even based on just if you were doing a trade at your local game shop, the difference won't be significant. And I would definitely say also one of the most important things to do is always fight your corner. There's nothing wrong with asking for more, and there's nothing wrong with haggling and saying, this is my minimum price, and I won't sell it for less. And another thing you should definitely do is shop around. Pretty much wherever you live, there will be multiple people who will be prepared to make offers on your collection, and there's no reason necessarily that you should just go with the first one. So send out messages with your list if you have a list to multiple stores. And I guess if you don't have a list, it's extremely difficult to get a quote. And if you are going to compile a list, it's good to have the conditions attached. And it's good to have it sorted in terms of the value of the cards. So the most valuable cards are at the top. And it's good to have the sets attached as well, because if you just write Sphere of Resistance and it's something like this, it'd be difficult to give you a fair value if the person doesn't know that it's a masterpiece. So ultimately, I guess the point I want to make is you have to take responsibility for making sure that you get the most value out of the collection you want to sell. Or sometimes this is not a whole collection. It might be just a deck that you are finished playing with and would like to get traded or sold into something else. Or it might be a format that you've given up on if you don't want to play modern anymore, or you don't want to play commander anymore, and you want to focus on standard or just play limited. Whatever it is, do your homework, I would say. Fight your corner. Send your list off to multiple people. And the more work that you're prepared to do in this way, the more knowledge and more power you have in selling your collection, selling your cards, and the better decision you'll be able to make. A lot of the, I would say, sort of shady things that happen in the Magic buying community happen because of there's often a big discrepancy in the level of information that each party has, the buyer and the seller, and there's often a big discrepancy in the level of experience that they have, and usually that is to the buyer's advantage. And so if you are somebody who wants to sell their Magic collection, I wholeheartedly recommend that you take some of this advice on board. This is the end of the video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.